So in this course, we're going to use a variety of technologies. In particular, we're going to make use of two code writing tools, one called Eclipse and one called Replit.com. And depending on when you're watching this video, you've probably used one or maybe even both of them up to this point. But this video is going to explore how to get, in particular, Eclipse set up on your home computer. We're also going to be using one custom-made game engine for the class. Java typically is not an engine or not a language that we write video games in for a variety of reasons. So as such, there's not too many game engines that we can get set up on our school computers. So I had to write one for us to make sure that we could actually have a little bit of fun and really investigate what we're capable of. So ideally, students are going to work effectively in class, and there's going to be a little need for you to actually work at home. But just in case, life happens. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we get sent home for pandemic reasons. Maybe the school just switches to a virtual strategy. Or maybe you have to quarantine for some reason, or whatever the reasons are. You may be working at home for some reason. Maybe that's just because you need a little bit of extra time, or you're the type of person who's kind of a go-getter and you want to learn more because you're actually interested in it. And that's great. Regardless, we'd like everyone to install the tools at home, quite simply because, as I said, life basically happens and we never really know what to expect. Now, Replit.com is a cloud-based tool, and it is a tool that allows you to write your code almost in a very similar idea to like a Google Doc or something like that, where it's saved on somebody else's server, and then you can access that file from anywhere with an internet connection. You could access it from your phone, you could access it from a laptop, a desktop at school, whatever it is, you can access and edit and even test and run your code from anywhere. It does have one major drawback. It's slow depending on the number of people actively using the server at that moment. So in peak hours, like during the school day, it's actually pretty slow. But in the evenings, it's usually a lot better and much more tolerable. Now that being said, we are going to focus on this video on setting up the industry standard tool, which is called Eclipse. And this is really what we really want to dig into. Now, if you do want to use Replit, for some reason or whatever the reason is, and maybe you can't get Eclipse working on at home, all you need to do is go to Replit.com and click the login button at the top. Don't worry, the login basically works like it uses your GAPS account. So there's no security issues whatsoever. The website never sees any of your personal information. Google handles all that behind the scenes and just basically sends that website a token saying you are who you say you are, so they should let you in. And that's basically it. Google acts as like the doorman to a restaurant type thing. Anyways, now let's get into Eclipse because that's where things get a little bit more interesting. Now, as I said, Eclipse is an industry standard tool for Java. There's a lot of other ones out there like IntelliJ and things like that, but Eclipse is above and beyond the industry standard because it is so useful, so diverse, and so flexible in terms of what we can do in it. Now, I'm going to go through a number of steps, and I've written these steps up for you so you can actually access them. What you need to know is that these steps need to be followed in order, and you should not move on to the next step until you're done the current step, because if you do, you could break the whole thing, which means you have to fight your way through uninstalling everything, and that could be a problem, and then you eventually are going to have to restart. So take your time, do everything one step at a time. So let's take a look at this document so you can see what you need to do. So this is our Eclipse home setup. Now, part one. The first thing we need to do is download the software needed to actually do this. Now you're going to need 3 pieces of software, really 2 pieces of software and a script. But let's take a look at this. So when you go on to your Google Classroom, you're going to go down to the Day 1 Introduction section and you're going to see 2 options, Eclipse Home Setup for Windows and Eclipse Home Setup for Mac. So depending on what you're working on, you're going to want to click on the option related to you. The instructions are basically the same, but the files do change. So you do need to be very wary about what you're doing. So at this point, the commonality of this video is going to shift, and I'm going to go into one tour or the other while you're watching this video so you can see how to follow along. So the Mac, if you are working with a Mac, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we have to follow the instructions. So the first instruction says to download all the needed files. Now basically we're going to need a file for the JDK, the Java Development Kit, which allows us to actually install Java and write our code. Software number 2 is Eclipse itself, which is the tool we're going to use to write our code on. And then finally, the script that I mentioned is a document that allows us to cleanly format our code and will automatically do a lot of that for us when we first create projects. Now there's going to be a lot of steps, so take your time, and if you need to backtrack on this video, do it. Okay? So the first thing we need to do is for Mac, we are going to need to install, or we're going to need to download the JDK with this name. Now, I have both options available for you on Google Classroom, both the damage file, DMG file, and the zip file. Now, the reason why I put both here is depending on the security you have set up on your personal computer, you may not be able to download this. It may say, no, we don't trust that. So instead, you'll have to download the zip file and then unzip it. Okay? Usually you can just right click on it and say unzip here or extract here, and it'll give you that option. So for the JDK, we're going to download the damage file. You can see JDK-8. That's really what we're looking for here. And then below that, we need to get the Eclipse file. So here for the Mac, we want the Eclipse, the JRE Mac 64. Again, the DMG file. And then finally, both Windows and Mac are going to download this exact same scripting file, which is SLSS formatting. Okay, so that's software. That's the 3 pieces of software. Let's go get those. So going on to our Google Classroom, we can see here's the JDK. This is the DMG file. It starts .d. I can't really see the rest, but I can see there's the zip file. So I don't want that one. I'm going to download this one. And the way I do that is if I middle click on it, it's going to open it up in a new tab. Or I can right click and I can say open link in new tab. Either way, we want it open in a new tab. So I'm going to open this one. I'm going to open the next one I need is Eclipse. So again, I want the DMG file. I'm going to open that one. And I want the formatting file. So you can see that I'm actually going to be ignoring the zip files. And it looks like I actually have a mistake here. It looks like I accidentally uploaded the DMG file twice for Eclipse and not the zip file. So I'll go back and I'll correct that before you actually see this video. So going in here, I'm going to download. I can download just by clicking that download arrow. And when I do that, we might get a message that says, are you sure you want to download this? It may be a virus. It's okay. I'm the one giving it to you. I got these files directly from the actual website itself, so they're all safe files. So I've already downloaded these. When I did download them, I put them in a folder so I could always find them, of course. And here are the 3 files. So that's really all you need is 3 files, and this whole thing will work out. We just have to do a few steps when we do that. So back into our document here. We are now finished part 1. We've got all the files. Part 2, this is the big one. This is the one that takes a little bit of care. Now this is installing and setting up the software. Software number 1 is the JDK, the Java Development Kit. Now the instructions for Windows and Mac are a little bit different. You can see Mac has an extra step in there because something may go wrong when it comes to Mac, and we have to deal with that. So first thing it says to do is to run that DMG file. So let's go run that file. Where did my document go here? Here we go. So there is the JDK. I'm just going to double click that. Now you do need administrator access to install these files. So if you don't have it, make sure you're with somebody who does. Next, we're just going to open up the PKG file, the package file. Run it. You can see it's setting itself up as an installer. Well, we're just going to basically choose all of the default options. I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to hit install. You can see it takes about 525 megabytes to install this. Now I got to put in my password. Nobody look. Now it's going through the installation. Now this may take a minute or two, in which case if it does, I'll edit the video to try and trim it down a little bit so you guys aren't sitting here listening to nothing while we wait for it. Oh, that was quick. So we're done that piece. The installation was completed successfully. So the JDK says it's installed. And hit close. Okay, so we're done with this guy. Now the next thing it says to do, once you go through this, so run the open box. When done, it should only take a few seconds. Click close. Choose to not remove the install file if asked, and then it says reboot your computer. So I'm going to pause the video here and I will stitch it together afterwards because I am going to reboot my computer as it asked me to do in the instructions. And we just finished rebooting the computer. So now what we need to do is we need to test to ensure that Java was actually correctly installed. So what we need to do is open a terminal. Now I have the terminal docked on my dock, but you may not. So if that's the case, you can go into the Finder app and you can just type in terminal. And you'll see that it pops up pretty quickly. You can open that up from there. Let me just go back here to where it was. So we need to open up that terminal. Let's open that up. And we're going to follow the instructions here. It says type in /user, S-U-S-R, not U-S-E-R, /libexec /java_home capital V. It's capital V. Now when we do this, it tells me exactly which version of the JRE I have installed, which is 1.8.0_301, and it tells me where that's actually located. This is important. So this is great. If you only see this version here, you're done. You're good, you can move on to the next step. However, some of you, for example, if you're working on a home computer and maybe you have a programmer for a parent or something like that, you may see more than one option here. If that's the case, then what you need to do is you need to go down to part C of the explanation here, because we need to set the computer up to use this JDK 1.8.0301 as your default Java version. And the reason being is because a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in class absolutely require this. So I'm going to show you how to do it regardless here, just so you have it. Now the first thing you need to realize is that depending on what version of Mac OS you have, you may be using a different version of the terminal. So the modern versions, the most recent versions of Mac OS, use the ZSH shell, the ZSH terminal, and the older versions use the bash terminal. So we can check this actually very easily. We just type in echo space $shell all caps. And this tells me that I'm using the ZSH option. If you're using the bash option, your instructions can be slightly different. But the actual instructions themselves are the same. It's just the file that you're going to be opening that's different. So if you're using the bash option, you're going to open up the bash_profile document. If you have the ZSH one, then you're going to use the ZSHM, which stands for environment. So what we're actually doing is we're modifying the environment variables of our actual computer itself. We're adding Java into that system, so whenever our computer boots up, it knows where to find Java. That's basically it. So this is how we do this. We want to open up an editor to edit that file. So in this case, again, I'm in the ZSH. So I'm going to open up, the program is going to be called nano, and then space, little tilde there, /dot, and then depending on which version of the terminal you're using, put in the correct one, ZSHENV for me. And this is what it looks like. It's fairly straightforward, and all we're going to do is we are going to write this exact line inside of here. So I'm going to write export, and then Java_home, yes, capitals matter, equals $, bracket, and then /USR, so the exact same one that we did before, libexec, and then Java_home, and now we're going to tell it which version to use. -V space 1.8, close my bracket, and I don't have to hit enter or anything like that. I just leave it like that, and you can see down here it says use Control-X to exit, so that's what we're going to do, Control-X. Do I want to save? Yes, I do. Do I want to overwrite the same file? Yes, I do. I'm going to hit enter, and that's everything. So it is supposedly changed now. So we can test this. So what we're going to do is in the terminal, we're going to source the file. What that basically means is run the file. So we're going to type in source, and then the tilde, and then the slash, and then the dot, and then your version of your terminal. So for me, it's ZSHENV. And that basically ran the file. So now we can test to see whether Java Home has been set up to be this directory. Let's see. Echo $Java_home. And there we go. It's working now. So now every time we reopen our program or re-log in, it should have everything set up. I guess I made a little bit of a mistake there. I will put that in there to the fact that we should be doing the correct one depending on which one we're actually using. Okay, so that's part C. We're all done now. We officially have the JDK installed. That is good news because that's the most challenging part. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. So the next step is to install the IDE, the actual Eclipse environment. And as you can see, these instructions are quite a bit smaller. So it says run the proper file. So if you're on Windows, you're going to run that guy. If you're on Mac, we're going to run the DMG file. We're on a Mac right now, so let's go run the DMG file. So there's the Eclipse file. I'm just going to double click it. Now this one may take a little bit longer to actually do. So I'll probably have to edit this video a little bit, depending on the speed of your computer. So I want to run the Eclipse installer, as it says. When asked, choose run this. Now it's going to go through. We're going to choose basically the default options for everything, but eventually it's going to ask us which version of the IDE we want. So I'm going to click open. Yes, it's okay. Don't need this. We can minimize that. Minimize that. What we want to do is we want to choose Eclipse IDE for Java developers because obviously that's what we're doing. Now we're just going to keep the default options. What you're seeing here is that it's installing version 17 of the tool that we just installed version 8 for. 17 is literally brand new as of the making of this video. I'm making this video in November of 2021. So it's very, very recent, but we're going to be using 8 in our class just for compatibility reasons with the school computers. So please make sure that you're using version 8. So we're just going to leave this as is. That's okay. It's not a big deal. This part is going to take a while. We're going to accept. We're going to use all the default options. And this one's going to take a few minutes. Now you see that orange message pop up saying that it's taking longer than expected. That's okay. Just be patient. Just be patient. Okay, so we're back now and it looks like everything finished. I'm going to click no to the launch. I do not want to launch it right now because we have to do some other things before we get to that point. So let's close this. We're all done here. You're about to exit the installer without being launched. Yes, I'm well aware. Do you want to launch Mail? No, I do not. Thank you very much. So as it says here, we want to reboot our computer again. So I'm going to stop the video, and when we come back, my computer will be freshly rebooted. Computer's all rebooted. Everything should be hopefully good to go. So at this point, we should be done. We should have Eclipse installed and the JDK. We just have to go through a few more steps to make sure that everything is working the way we expect. So first thing we need to realize is that we need to use something called a workspace. Now a workspace is a fantastic tool that Eclipse uses, and not every other IDE does. What it basically is a folder structure that is integrated with Eclipse, so you can basically have all of your projects that you've ever worked on open simultaneously. What this does, it allows you to flip back and forth between files, maybe grab some code from one project, bring it into another project, things like that. So it makes your workflow a lot quicker. So what we need to do is we need to set up a folder to do this. Now, you generally speaking want to be able to take your files to and from home and school. That's why we're doing the setup right now. So if that's the case, if you're working on a laptop, then you can just basically create a folder on your desktop. So I'll create one right here, new folder, and I'll call this ICS. Oops, let me rename that. That's weird. ICS, and then inside of there, I'm going to create a folder called Workspace. New folder, Workspace. There we go. It doesn't necessarily have to be called workspace. I just like doing that. You may have more than one workspace because maybe you have one for personal stuff and maybe you have one for school stuff. So you could have two folders in here, and depending on which one you want to work on, when you open up Eclipse, you can choose to go to whichever folder makes sense at that moment. So I'm going to close this. I know it's in my ICS folder. Great. Now, as I said though, you may not be working on a laptop. Maybe you are working on a desktop at home, and bringing it to and from school obviously isn't an option. So if that's the case, what I would suggest you do is get a flash drive. Just a small flash drive will be enough, and create your workspace on there. And then whenever you open Eclipse, you just browse to the workspace on your flash drive. And that makes things a lot easier. Of course, we always want to follow the general rules of making backups as often as possible, usually once a day whenever we're working on a project, just in case. And that basically means taking the folder of the project you're working on, zip it up, and put it on another drive somewhere, usually Google Drive or something like that, so you have access to it. All right, so we have our workspace built. We just have to actually use it now. So I'm going to open Eclipse. Wait, where in the world is Eclipse? I don't know. So let's go into Finder and let's find it. So I'm going to search for Eclipse. Eclipse. Oops. Search. And there it is right there. So I'm going to open it. And what I suggest you do is add it to your dock. So right click, Options, Keep in Dock. That way you can always find it whenever you need it. So as it's loading, it's usually going to take a little bit longer the first time. After the first time, though, it makes life a lot easier. It's going to be much quicker. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. So the first thing it's going to ask us for is, where's your workspace? So we're going to browse to our workspace. I have mine on my desktop. You have yours wherever you have yours. I don't know. So mine's in my desktop, ICS, workspace, and hit open. Now before I hit launch, I want to make sure this box is not checked. Use this as the default and do not ask again, because that will then limit me from having multiple workspaces if I would like to. So I'm going to keep that unchecked. So it's going to ask me for my workspace every time, but that's okay. It will actually remember the last one you used, so a lot of times you'll just be able to hit launch again. So I'm going to click launch. And it's getting everything set up for the first time. So again, it takes a little bit longer, but not too long. And we have one step after this. All right. Eclipse would like to access files on your desktop folder. Yes, I'm going to allow that. Okay. So the last step, if we come back over here, we have our workspace all set up. The last step is to set up our code formatting so we don't have to do this. Oh, sorry, I guess there's two more steps left. I lied. So we're going to set up our code formatting. Now the reason why we do this is so whenever you create a new project, it's going to automatically use the basic code formatting processes that we use in class. Now if you're using a Windows computer, you're going to follow this path to get to the file that we're going to be changing. And if you're using a Mac, you're going to follow this strategy. So let's open this up. I'm going to choose Eclipse, Preferences. It's going to open up a folder for me. Here I want to choose Java, Code Style, and then Formatter. And you can see here that it basically shows what the basic, these are the standard default ways that Java creates its code. This is not great in terms of readability, so we use a different version. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose Import. And I want you to browse to wherever you save that SLS formatting.xml file. For me, I have it on my desktop in my Eclipse setup folder. There it is. And I'm going to hit open. Now watch the difference here. You can see the code has been realigned and now it's all symmetrical and it's much more easy to read. So that's it there. That's just example code, of course. We're going to hit apply and then apply and close. So our code is now going to be formatted perfectly the way we expect it to. Okay, one final step. Here we go. The final configuration. This basically ties everything together and makes sure that whenever we create a project, it's always using the correct JDK. In this case, we always want it to be using JDK 8. So just like before, we're going to go into our top menu. For Mac, it's going to be Eclipse, Preferences. And this time I want to go to, let's minimize that. We want to go to Java. I want to go to Installed JREs. Give it a second to load them all up. Now you can see that it's got JRE 17 chosen as a default. I don't want that. I want it to be using version 8. And the reason why we're doing that is because that's what our school computers use. So that way we can bounce back and forth between school computers and personal computers whenever needed. Maybe your computer breaks down or whatever it is, we want to be prepared to handle that situation. Now, if for some reason this thing isn't showing up, you can actually search for this, and then you can go into the directory that we set up earlier in the previous step. You can hit that search button and just kind of find your way into it, and there it is right there. Okay. Hopefully you can just click on that. So now we hit apply and close, and we're done with that. So we've linked them together. So we're going to add one extra piece to the final configuration section. So after we've set up the installed JRE, we're going to go back in there, browse in there again. So again, if you are in Windows or Java, this does make a difference here. So in Windows, you're going to be going to Window Preferences, Java Install JREs, whereas on a Mac, you're going to go to Eclipse Preferences, Java Install JREs. So again, Eclipse Preferences, Java, and then Install JREs. We're actually not going here. This is actually done. What we are going to do is backtrack a little bit, and we're going to go to Java Compiler. And what I want you to do is I want you to change this option right here, Compiler Compliance Level. We need to put it to the same version as our JRE, which is 1.8. So we're going to scroll up. We're going to say 1.8, and we're going to apply. Yes, we would like to rebuild to apply the changes, and we can apply and close. And that is it. Now we should be able to integrate all of our games, and everything should work exactly as we expect. So let's create our very first Java program using Eclipse so we can see how this works. So first thing, File, New. I guess let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see something a little bit better. Okay. There we go. File, New, Java project. Now I got to give it a name. So I'm just gonna give it a basic name. I'm gonna call this first program. Again, we follow standard naming conventions, no spaces. We always name it with mixed case when it comes to project names. You'll notice as a default, it's using version 1.8, exactly what we wanted. Perfect. All we have to hit now is finish. So it's just loading up, creating that project for us. We can get rid of this welcome window. We don't need it. No, I don't want to donate. We can close that. All right. So our program has no files yet. It's a blank project. So whenever you create a brand new program in Eclipse, this is how you get started. You're going to right click on the SRC folder, which stands for source code. Right click, and we're going to say new class. And I'm going to call this main program. Okay. Now, since this is going to be the only file in my program, or going to be the main file in my program, I'm going to check off this little box here that's going to add the public static void main. If I don't check this, my program won't compile. And everything else we're just going to leave. We're just going to leave alone. We're just going to check that box and give it a name, and hit finish. Now we can see here, there's our project, and it has all the proper formatting. Let's do a quick little hello world program so we can see everything. System.out.println hello world, and you can see IntelliSense doing its thing. And now we run it, and we should see the console pop up down here. So whenever we run, it's going to ask us if we want to save. If you've already saved it, it won't ask you. And there we see in the console, hello world. Obviously, this console looks quite a bit different than Replit, but this is what it is. You can move it around to different parts of the window, but yeah, usually you're going to want to expand this. So for every project that we have inside of our program, it's just going to get its own little folder in this thing, and eventually this is going to get quite big and large, which is another reason why you may want more than one workspace. So let's reduce the size of this thing. There we go. And going back to our folder or document, everything is now set up, and we're actually ready to integrate and start building our games as well. So in the next video, I'm going to walk you through loading in your very first Java game engine project. That's it for now. Good luck and have